And so it comes down to this, the final race of 3 making up the opening round of the V8 SuperTourers here at Hampton Downs. And can anybody topple Greg Murphy, who's made it 2 from 2 as we head into the feature race? The final race of 3 here this weekend, held over 30 laps. And Murph has been the king thus far as you look at the colour and the grid in front of a massive crowd here this weekend. Just under 20,000 people beyond expectations. And there you see the Holden and Ford fans cheering on their favourite stars in these cars here this weekend. The SuperTourers are here, larger than life, as we count down for the start of race number 3. And here's how they line up. A combination of the qualifying and race points this thus far sees Greg Murphy lining up in pole position. Alongside him, Kane Scott. It's an all Holden front row. Johnny Reid starting out of position 3, the first of the Fords, and Andy Booth, who led yesterday's race, position number 4. Eddie Bell having a brilliant weekend in his small team, position 5. Andy Knight alongside in number 6. Ant Pedersen and John McIntyre, an all Ford, 4th row of the grid. McIntyre finding some speed in that car last time out. McLaughlin and Manuel on position 9 and 10. On the next row of the grid, we see Steve Richards and Andre Heimgartner. Heimgartner off the road in the last race in the latter stages. Richard Moore lines up next in position 13. Craig Baird, a retirement, and the only retirement thus far this weekend alongside him. Then it's Jeff Emery and Colin Corkery on the final row, the 8th row of the grid, in positions number 15 and 16. Certainly has been a fantastic weekend of racing here, and Greg Murphy is the king, the man to beat. We're looking at the in-car cameras on board with John McIntyre in the Ford Falcon. John McIntyre racing machine struggling with a lot of excess weight in that car here this weekend as a result of building quite light chassis and taking on board a host of fuel as ballast. They're working through that program, more work to be done there, but McIntyre scoring some valuable points. Greg Murphy also in-car cameras. We've been looking at clear road ahead for Murph, as he's had both of those victories thus far. Car number 51, the name synonymous with Greg Murphy, the 4-time Bathurst winner, as he goes about warming up the tyres. Paul Manuel in the Oryx Commodore, also out of the same team as Greg Murphy, the M3 Racing equipped, and he also has been finding some form during the course of the weekend, a little bit lower in qualifying than we'd expect, and back on board with the Scottish helmet, the colour scheme aboard John McIntyre there, and really have been struggling a lot this weekend. They're even running a passenger seat in this car to ensure that they conform with the 1,390 kilogram weight limit. As we now have a look at Ant Pedersen, and he sits well up in 7th spot, having a good weekend in the International Motorsport Ford Falcon, teammate to Johnny Reid. So both of those cars up inside the top 7 spots. Reid in 3rd, Pedersen in position number 7, and under glorious sunny skies, we welcome back to the commentary box Mark Pedersen. What's the goss, my friend? Lots going on up and down pit lane there, but we've had a pretty much 100% finish rate with the exception of your mate, Craig Baird. What happened to him last time out?
Yeah, look, he had a bit of coming together early in the race of Scott McLaughlin, and apparently it put the wheel alignment out a little bit, and then Craig's own words, he really finished the car off with Ant Pedersen, with Ant being a completely innocent victim there. So it retired with mechanical issues, but you will see it circulating there in the background, so they've got it repaired now. But we have to say, other than take Craig Baird out of the equation, it's been 100% finishing rate for all these cars. But look, a lot of soul searching going through between race 2 and 3. The teams are still trying to get on top, trying a few more tricks, and what they've done on the bonnets of all the cars, Chris, they've actually put what they call a gurney flap, or if we get a close-up at some stage, it's just to try to extract some of the air. There you see right in front of us there, you'll see the Ford logo, and then just directly above it you'll see a little bit of material. It's designed to extract the hot air outside of the bonnet, so try to bring the engine temperatures down a little bit. Some of the teams, they're getting to 100 plus now. This magnificent V8 SuperTourer engine that's been purposely built for this class, they said it'll go to 120 plus degrees all day long. They don't want to try to get there, so they're going to try something in this race to hope cool them down a little bit. They'll put that into the data bank later on and saying, well, that worked. No, it didn't. Right, what else can we look at?
Yes, well, in essence, these cars really are having a full-scale dress rehearsal, only a minimum number of laps for a lot of these teams, the least of which was for Kane Scott's operation, and they didn't even attend the Friday practice day's first session. We're looking at John McIntyre, a lot of rear-end damage to that car, and we saw the under tray come from that car in race 2, and a safety car deployed as a result. I asked John whether that actually affected the handling of the car. He said the way my car's handling at the moment, nothing would. He's completely unhappy with the weight balance, but as he said, it's all about the category. It's all about ensuring that we can find a way to have the playing field much more level. It certainly is at this point. It's a control category, control specification, but the weight issue has become a little bit more problematic for some of the Ford teams, and the heat issue seems to have afflicted them a little bit more than the Holden teams.
Yes, slightly different design there, especially in the front, obviously because of the silhouette. The rest of these magnificent cars is exactly the same, so we're only talking about the exterior body panels, but of course where there's that slight bit of difference, a little bit more cooling maybe getting into the Holdens more than the Fords, but there's also a couple of Holdens that have been suffering. they suffer a little bit more when they're in traffic. So what we're going to see in this race in particular, we're going to see the cars pull out of the draft a lot earlier, or take some very unique lines when they get the opportunity to. So they won't be line astern as much as we saw in race 1 and 2. They'll be pulling out, getting as much cold air over the car as they can, help bring those cabin temperatures down, also the engine temperature down, and then they can have another hard, aggressive charge in the car in front. As
we mentioned, the grid reflects the accumulated total of the points from qualifying and the 2 races held thus far. 70 points up for grabs for pole position. Well, that went to Kane Scott yesterday, paid all the way down to 10th spot, and the races paid all the way down to those drivers finishing. So the combined totals see the grid order. Murphy, 503 series points and pole position for this 30-lap final. Kane Scott, 412 points. Johnny Reid, 372. Andy Booth, 365. Then it's Bell, 267. Knight, just 2 points behind in 265. Pedersen, 215, and a lone point back to John McIntyre. So very close as far as the points are concerned. And it's interesting too, the points here, at the end of the championship, there could well be somebody on 2,000 or 3,000 points. It really is a reflection in some ways of NASCAR, but it also is something very unique to this formula.
That's right, and it's unheard of in New Zealand motorsport to have so many points, but it's a good thing as well, because if you have a bit of a bad round, you can always make it come back up and you can gather up steam pretty quick. But here we go, the lights are off in the safety car. Greg Murphy, in his own admission, he duffed race 2 start. I don't think he's going to do it again.
Yes, we'll wait and see, won't we, as we see the cars lining up 2 abreast, 8 rows of 2. Interesting to see a red and a blue Holden on the front row of the grid. Now, Murph has been fluffing his starts. 70 to 100 Ks, prescribed speed, second gear for all of these runners. 575 horsepower and loads of torque. Easy to get some wheel spin here as they roll to the start line for what will be a 3rd lap journey. There's a car getting out of shape big time. We talked about the torque, and once again, Kane Scott has made a blindingly fast start. Andy Booth also on the outside of Reid, and then further back, John McIntyre tapped into a slide there, but again, Murphy slow away the start, and drama at the back as we see Colin Corkery and the car of Richard Moore off on the outside of 1.
Yeah, you could just see it coming into it, couldn't you? The cars with Concertina coming in there. We saw Johnny McIntyre get a little bit sideways, probably being helped a little bit by Andy Knight, and it just caused that Concertina effect. But look, these guys are just jostling for position. They know they've got 2 or 3 laps to have their best charge before they get in a bit of a positional line of flow. So what are we going to see? Greg Murphy, once again, Kane Scott has got the jump on him, but we know that may only last 4 or 5 laps from race 1 or 2.
Look at Craig Baird muscling the back of the car of Paul Manuel. Here we see that shot, and really well held by John McIntyre. That was Andy Knight tapping that car, and then further back we see some airborne activity there for Colin Corkery and Richard Moore as well. That'll test the robust strength of these NASCAR housing differentials that come from the NASCAR road course. And yet again, Kane Scott leads the race. I spoke with Oscar Fiorinato, his engineer, after the race earlier today, and he said we should have won that race. We were doing it easily. Everything was coming on well. Well, they were a long way behind at the end of the race, and maybe that wasn't necessarily a reflection of the pace that Oscar thinks is in this car. So Murphy is 2nd in screen and 3rd right behind his Reid, but coming under fire from Andy Booth in the Woodstock Bourbon Commodore as they head up to this sinuous turn 2-3 complex.
At the moment, it's all a sea red, isn't it, with the except of Johnny Reid there in 3rd place. So Andy Booth, he is just going to monster the back of that Ford Falcon there of Johnny Reid as much as he can. But here's Greg Murphy. Look, he's already starting to erode into Kane Scott's lead. It's just a little bit. Takes him a lap or 2 to find his feet. We've said before that some of the teams are saying it takes lap 3 or 4 before the tyres are at the best, and maybe Kane has just adapted his driving style to get the best out of it from lap 1, 2 and 3, but you just can't help but think. But here we go, this is Corkery's car in the pits. We saw that contact in turn 1, lap 1, so whatever damage he sustained is enough to make the car park in the garage. Not a great deal of sense of urgency, so maybe it is a bit terminal.
Kane Scott's looking very comfortable at the moment. Now, we've seen this before. The first race was 20 laps, second race 25. This one originally scheduled for 35, reduced by 5 back to 30 laps the duration. And once again, they will go into an area they've never been before, the voyage of the unknown, as Johnny Reid, who really has been a good performer here, coming under fire there from Andy Booth. Reid having his first 4-door sedan car race here in the V8 SuperTourers, and really doing a good job looking at a podium spot on debut. I just wonder about the mindset of Greg Murphy here. Clearly he wants to win every race, just as he did some years ago when the first V8 supercar race came to Pukekohe. But he also has to think of the series points, and any undue risk could well see Kane Scott leave here as the championship leader. So he needs to apply some form of discretion and patience to his pursuit of Kane Scott, as we see the car of Richard Moore, the skinny prepaid mobile machine, and Skinny's, it's all graffiti because it's all about the youth market and the area they're targeting as far as that message from the sponsorship. And these cars all very well commercially supported and resplendent in their liveries. Great to see them out on track here. Really enjoying being here this weekend.
Yeah, and there's quite a few new investors coming to the class. Obviously Woodstock there and Andy Booth's car, which, you know, given the state of the economy at the moment, it is so good to see. You know, a lot of people didn't think this was even going to happen in this category. Not only did it happen, it's actually brought a lot of new people. And here we see Craig Baird caught in the draft with the Paul Manuel Commodore. Now he's going to go the hard way around the outside of turn 1, but we know 2 cars can actually do that. He just tucks back in. Is he going to put a crossover? Going to get the run down the inside? Is that car going to disappear? No.
Partially fresher tyres too for this car because it did fail to finish last race. And there's McLaughlin ranging up on the outside, the fast man Friday. Luckless in the races thus far, but it was all his own doing last race. He actually piled into the side of Craig Baird in turn 1 on the restart after a safety car. Craig didn't take that particularly well, nor would you expect him to. Return serve at turn 2 and 3. McLaughlin was backwards, and unfortunately for Craig, more contact further on in the race with Ant Pedersen saw that car retire with suspension damage. So coming through the field, 2 of the quicker runners from earlier in the weekend, but for the moment, Paul Manuel doing a great job to hold them off in position number 8. Fastest lap we've seen all weekend was Greg Murphy, 5.0, and that is the lap record. The fastest lap in this race thus far is a 1:05.3, and it is by Greg Murphy. Surprise, surprise.
The ball there of Paul Manuel, you know, he's got a very, very experienced seasoned campaigner behind him, and also one of the youngest gentlemen campaigner right there behind Craig as well, Scott McLaughlin. So there's a lot of illustrious company around him. But last lap around, Greg Murphy took 0.3 of a second out of Kane Scott's lead, so it's only half a second between first and second place. A bit of a gap then between Greg Murphy and Johnny Reid, almost 2 seconds. So the race is definitely at the moment at the front of the field is between Scott and Murphy. But here's Paul Manuel looking at the back of his magnificent TV3 footage here. Craig Baird there really doesn't have an answer for him, does he?
No, he doesn't. And McLaughlin's just having a little bit of a look on the inside of that car there, going into turn number 4. They're heading uphill again now out of that second gear corner. Around 250 metres of bitumen there as they crest the rise and dive into this very tight hairpin out of turn number 5 there. There's Scott and Murphy, front of screen. And Kane Scott will be looking to score his first victory, 2 thus far to Murph. The first one, of course, in race 1, backing that up beautifully with a fairly convincing win by some 4 seconds in the next race. But for the moment, under fire is Kane Scott as we ride with Greg Murphy across the line. And that time through, we see the fastest lap go to Kane Scott, just fraction of a second quicker than Greg Murphy, and they're in the 1 minute 5.2 second bracket, and Johnny Reid falling back to around 2.6 seconds behind. Now Johnny was much quicker later in the race. 3 tyre sets for each of these cars this weekend, and you can choose to rotate those through. Many drivers have kept a set of tyres in reserve for this longer 30 lap final, and it looks like the front 2 are definitely on very good rubber. The Hankook Ventus F200 tyre debuting here this weekend as a very durable tyre as we ride with the BP Ultimate sponsored John McIntyre, and each of these cars running on the BP pump fuel, the 98 octane Ultimate fuel, and great to see them with the flames licking from the side of these cars, adding ever more to the spectacle as they head down to this corner on now the 6th lap of 30.
Now you made comment about Johnny McIntyre, that team not being entirely happy with the setup of that car. Well, must be very quick willingness, because at the start of race 1 he was kind of languishing towards the back of the field there after qualifying. He's having a good healthy battle here for 4th spot. He's currently in 5th, but the man in front of him has had a lot of speed all weekend, Andy Booth. So whatever they're trying on this car at this point of the race is working for him.
Yeah, around 22 kilos of lead in this car, plus the passenger seat to conform with a 1,390 kilogram combined driver and car limit. And they clearly have just been chipping away, getting the car to handle a bit better. His teammate Stephen Richards is all the way down in 13th spot, so I think he was delayed as a result of that early race incident we saw going through turn 1. And Richards is sitting further down than we would expect. So there's the Booth McIntyre night battle. We're on lap number 7 of this 30 lap event. As we see them heading into this undulating section of the circuit. Easy to lock a brake there, turning left as they go back to second gear in these sequential gearboxes, the 6-speed Quaife gearbox, used in a lot of GT3 racing around the world, and a cost-effective and very well-credentialed gearbox it is. Future changes and complaints as far as downshifting and some of the telemetry parameters that were allowing the shift cut to not necessarily work the way they'd hoped yesterday, but they're fine-tuning them with each passing lap as we look over the shoulder of John McIntyre, heading down this very long front straight through the kink and just touching 245 kilometres an hour now before diving on the brakes and diving into this very heavily cambered downhill right-hander. Some drivers choosing to use third gear, others fourth. Then a short squirt along the run to the uphill turn 2-3 complex.
Caught up with Andy Booth actually before the start of this race, and I said, what happened to you in race 2, Andy? You had all the speed going after race 1, and he goes, well, they made such a small change, and he said it was microscopic and tried to get a little bit more performance out of it, and they went the wrong way, but he said such a small change made a huge difference in overall speed of the car. So they said, we're not going to make that mistake, and we'll go back on the engineering change they made, hope to get a little more speed out of it. But the man in the picture there in the BP Ultimate car, Johnny McIntyre, he is definitely the biggest mover so far in this race. As we said, they've been suffering for car speed so far.
Considering he started 13s for race 1, it certainly has been a pretty good fight back up into 5th now as we look at that train behind them, still including Eddie Bell doing a great job. Down in 7th now, finished the last race up in 5th spot. Former Mini driver and karting star, who has also been a round winner of the V8 touring car class here and thoroughly enjoying this car. He was waxing lyrical about the style that's required to drive it. And by contrast, as we once again McIntyre have a look at Booth, I spoke with Jeff Emery, the Australian, who is adapting to this car from having driven the Fujitsu V8 Supercar and a Commodore Cup car before that, and he said he really just needs to get his head around believing they have got the grip and they have the turn-in balance that they are feeding back to the driver. They're very different to drive to any previous sedan car he's driven.
And Eddie Bell had exactly the same commentary as what you just mentioned about Emery. You just got to believe the car can do it. There's a bit of Morse code going on between Andy Booth and Johnny McIntyre, but like the guys are saying is that the cars can do it. They've got to get their head around the fact that they can do it as well.
Well, the engine is some 180 millimetres back inside the engine bay, so the weight distribution is very good on these cars as well. And they are a significantly lighter car than the V8 Supercar counterparts from Australia. And welcome to all of those people watching on Speed in Australia. Great to have you on board here as we look at this V8 SuperTourer action from Hampton Downs. A glorious and lively little circuit. This is a lively battle too, as Andy Booth still somehow manages to keep John McIntyre at bay. We're on lap number 10.
Yeah, there's Mr. McIntyre, Johnny's father, who always a very keen supporter of him. A couple of things we're noticing here already. Johnny McIntyre is making no attempt to get any draft off Andy Booth's car at any part of the track. Every opportunity he gets, he's just pulling out. You'll see it right there. Also, it seems the windscreen wipers might be working on Eddie Bow's car for one reason or another, whether it's Morse code or some message to the team. I'm not too sure. Maybe just bumped the switch without knowing. But you know, if Johnny McIntyre's pulling out already, he's trying to get as much cold, crisp, fresh air as he can over that car. Let it cool off and hope that he can just sucker Andy Booth into making some sign mistake.
He's a wily character, Andy Booth, of course, former New Zealand Grand Prix winner, and here's a couple of wily characters, the ex-Trans Am star in Kane Scott and the four-time Bathurst winner in Greg Murphy, and they are nose to tail, and it will not be an easy pass, and there's an easy tap,
well, that's one way.
That will not be popular.
Nah, I tell you what, if I was Greg Murphy, I'd just come straight into the pits right now, because either way there's going to be a recording or a call at some stage saying, come pay us a quick visit for a drive-through penalty, because for whatever reason, Kane Scott now has actually stopped. Here's a replay of it. Kane's hard on the brakes. Yeah, he just served him, didn't he? Fair and square. Look, there's probably no malice in that. He just, fortunately, just outbraked himself and then he went.
Well, this is what we were talking about earlier. Patience. Needs to be patient. He has the round win in his grasp here, Greg Murphy, even if he finishes second to Kane Scott there. But just like braking a little bit late, unsighted into this corner that is a multi-apex corner. A lot of drivers choosing just to hug the inside line the whole way around. But regardless, any rearward contact from a following car is normally deemed to be the responsibility of the following driver. And a pit lane penalty for Greg Murphy potentially could beckon, and if in fact that happens, it'll drop him well down the order, but may not necessarily deny him the overall round win. The big loser, of course, is Kane Scott, who is now shown all the way down in position number 14. So on corrected time, for the first time this weekend, it's going to be a Ford leading the motor race.
Yeah, well, what's also interesting is the overall lap times. Greg Murphy, we know how much car speed he's got, but we think he's going to get some kind of penalty for the incident of Kane Scott there. But Johnny Reid, Andy Booth, Johnny McIntyre, they're all doing very similar times, but what's interesting is that Johnny Reid is in clear air. The six cars in the picture now are all battling with each other. So if Johnny McIntyre, I believe, can promote himself in front of Andy Booth, he's actually going to have a legitimate chance of winning this race, because I think he's got a lot more car speed than anybody else at this stage of the race.
There's Ant Pedersen having a good look at Scott McLaughlin going up into now position 8, and there's another car going round. Cars darting left and right, and Murphy will be coming into the pits. Careful, boys. There's a smoke screen there, and we hope there's not a hidden car in that group.
That's Andy Booth, actually, Bob. Boothie's gone around. He's right in the gaggle there.
Look at the battle between McLaughlin and Baird.
So, but the smoke was caused by Andy Booth. We know he was in a fierce competition there with Johnny McIntyre, the man on the screen right there on the left-hand side. So at some stage, he's come unstuck. Was he assisted? Here we go. No. look for the crossover.
This, didn't we? There's
I got it. Yeah, Eddie Bell gave him a helping hand.
Wow, and a solid whack too as Eddie Bell made contact with the right rear corner, and Andy Booth, foot still buried to the firewall there. So surprised he was, as we see 3 or 4 different angles of that. So further judiciary involvement likely to come on the back of that one. What is the line of thought here? Is it normally a drive-through penalty, or will it be a points penalty post-race? Or
well, it could be a mixture of both actually. Certainly a drive-through penalty if they deemed him to be at fault. If they deem it to be blatant enough, that they could actually impose an additional penalty. But I think what happened there, here we go, Murphy coming in for his drive-through penalty, and as we both know, this is just an entirety, isn't he, when you got to do the pit lane at 40 kilometres an hour.
Well, other than a couple of slow starts and that small indiscretion, Greg Murphy has been faultless here this weekend, and it will certainly mix up the championship order. Johnny Reid leading in a Ford. McIntyre second, was 13th on the grid for the first race. Manuel is third. Pedersen fourth. Booth still in fifth somehow. Then it's Baird, McLaughlin, Knight and Bell may well be coming under investigation as well, I would expect.
Yeah, look, I wouldn't be surprised if they actually don't bring Eddie Bell in, for the simple reason being is that Andy Booth went on the outside of Johnny McIntyre looking to do the crossover. Eddie Bell actually plugged the gut, so at some stage I think it was just a genuine racing incident. Yeah,
well, we'll certainly leave that one in the hands of the officials and our independent prosecuting officer here this weekend, who will have a look at that, and fortunately V, many angles to look at it from.
They certainly will have, yeah.
Here's Johnny Reid, and what a great job this boy's done. As I said, first time in a four-door sedan car race here in the Lyle Williamson International Motorsport Equipment. Teammate to Ant Pedersen, now leading by a very comfortable margin over John McIntyre. And Johnny Reid will be learning this car with each passing lap. Has a very good feel for open wheelers, and these cars have a fairly open wheeler type feel to them. So I expect he will be a championship challenger as the season unfolds. But before we start thinking about championships, we need to complete the second half of the race. And clearly it's a gloves-off final at the moment, as we see so much action up and down the order. Damage 2 to the left front corner of the car that we're looking backwards at now, which is the car of Paul Manuel, who's coming through the field as well. So Reid, McIntyre, Manuel, in fact that's, yes it is indeed, the Oryx car of Paul Manuel sitting in position number 3, and we're looking backwards out of that car of Pedersen. I think it's been in the pits, hasn't it?
It has. It's still circling anyway, but what, you know, how quick the fortunes can change. Paul Manuel, he was looking at a disastrous weekend there. Didn't have any speed in qualifying. They went and done a bit of soul searching, found a couple of things, and all of a sudden we find himself currently in 4th spot. That's actually for 3rd place, that battle there. So
I think he's actually dropped down. Something's happened. Yeah, McIntyre has passed both of them, so there has been contact. We saw that witness mark on the outside of that car of Manuel, so our timing screen will self-correct as they cross the line, and it will be Reid, McIntyre.
Look how relaxed he is. He's got one hand under the steering wheel, selecting the gears. He's like, okay, wonder what the Sunday roast is tonight.
Well, he's in 3rd spot, so we're looking at a 1-3 for International Motorsport at the moment, and it's all Fords. Incredible. Ford, top 3 spots, and Manuel clearly somewhere around the circuit had dramas. McLaughlin's up to 5th from 9th on the grid. Booth back to 6th. Heimgartner doing a good job at learning all the time, the young 16-year-old in 7th. Eddie Bell 8th. Richards up to 9th. And Jeff Emery rounds out the top 10, and we're coming around to complete half distance in this final race, the feature race, making up the opening round of the V8 SuperTourers.
Oh, Kane Scott, Kane Scott's car's retired, so whatever the damage is, they've obviously looking at the back of the car. That's the bit that we saw Johnny McIntyre fall off before in race 2. So whatever it is, maybe it might have come to the attention of the officials saying we deem this to be unsafe, come and stop.
Yeah, it didn't look particularly loose, did it, any time we saw it, unless there is another problem here. Heimgartner now fends off Eddie Bell in the independent fisheries car, and they head into this final corner on the 15th lap of 30 laps. There's some loose bodywork flailing around the back of Eddie Bell's car, so if Kane Scott is in the pits as a result of having flapping rear under tray, Eddie Bell may well be coming under investigation as well. There's the man in 3rd spot, the former Porsche driver. Spent some time in the development series in Australia as well, did Ant Pedersen. And of course, son of Paul, a former Carrera Cup runner. We go on board the lanky driver, only a youngster, 20 years of age, and really starting to put himself very well in the V8 SuperTourer category. These glorious looking cars, reflective of the Ford Performance Racing Falcon head on the side of that machine as he heads up out of turn number 4. Downhill now into turn number 5. 2nd gear hairpin, a very wide arc taken there as they apex and use all the road on the exit. And some, as you can see, a little bit of a crater being left at the end of that exit curve there. And then this charge, quite a long way too. It's foreshortened by the camera lens, around 300 metres, and up into 4th gear with high revs before back to this 3rd, then 4th gear continuing radius corner. It's 180 degrees, but it's a bowl and almost a sweeper as opposed to a hairpin. And then the long run uphill in front of the packed stands and banks here, and also the apartments, which there are 80 separate apartments in 4 blocks here, and alone there'd be 1,000 people sitting in those today enjoying the view of this racing as we now go down into this drop off at turn 1, where the track drops by some 7 metres on the run down to turn 2.
Now last lap Johnny McIntyre had a bit of a mare because he's actually dropped 2 seconds on Johnny McIntyre. On Johnny Reid. Johnny McIntyre's last lap time is 67.7, Johnny Reid is 65.9. And interestingly, if Johnny Reid wins this race now, Greg Murphy has to get up to at least 7th place to still win the round. So at the moment, the round honours will go to this man. Now here is Eddie Bow. We saw him have a bit of contact earlier on. Boys taking the tyre off there. We'll see the debris, the rear bumper there. The boys are going to do a bit of local repair with a magical race tape. Hasn't that fixed so many problems in the past? You're
right there, the 100-mile-an-hour tape. I just wonder what Greg's mindset is. One small error and all of a sudden the round may well go elsewhere, and specifically to a Ford driver on debut, as they all are in this category, but on debut in a 4-door sedan car, as that being Johnny Reid. So if Murphy can pass Emery, needs to catch him before he can pass him though, doesn't he? It's 3.7 seconds from 9th to 10th, that being Emery and Murphy. Then it's a further 6 seconds up to Heimgartner. So in the remaining 12 laps, Murphy can potentially also take the fastest lap of the race and a further valuable bag of points as well.
Yeah, look, that Johnny McIntyre, that indiscretion must have just been 1 lap there, because he's got straight back to speed again. 1 minute 6.0 was his last lap time. So whatever occurred, unfortunately just made that gap between himself and Johnny Reid even that much more to bridge.
Great sounding cars. 6,700 revs is the capped rev limit on these. Sound a little bit flatter to their cousins in V8 Supercar, but they've got a lovely, robust, throaty roar, as we see dramas for Paul Manuel now, and there's fluid coming out from under that car, and I just wonder whether that damage to the left front corner may well have, that's a lot of fluid under the car there, so I wonder whether that might well be engine or oil related, and he just chooses to go offline down into the hairpin.
Yeah, he might have been offline before, but right now he's actually online, so yeah, whatever's venting itself out, there's an awful lot of it coming out, as you just said, Chris. So he's going to nurse that thing back all the way back to the pits. He hasn't got far to go anyway.
Engine's still going, so may well be it's either an oil line has come adrift or even a radiator hose, but it looked more oil-like substance than water to myself, as Manuel still shown in 6th spot but out of the race now. Well, it certainly has come alive, hasn't it, in this final race, and we've only just passed the halfway, just short of the 2/3 mark, as Johnny Reid leads continually from John McIntyre in 2nd, Pedersen in 3rd, McLaughlin up to 4th from 9th, then Booth, Heimgartner, Richards, Emery, Murphy and Manuel on the way back to the pits.
Now interesting, right now this is the first time Johnny Reid has come past the area where we saw that fluid come out of Paul Manuel's car. Obviously hasn't affected him anything, so if he gets through, hopefully the rest of them will, but the teams would have been screaming out to the drivers, guys, be careful, something's come out. Kane Scott's regathered, so he's back out again, a number of laps, and we've got a full course yellow safety car.
Well, there must be some debris around the circuit, and that will certainly close things up as Kane Scott rejoins the fray as well, albeit some laps down.
Interesting though, you just mentioned that, Johnny McIntyre actually passed Kane Scott under the yellow flag. So, albeit a number of laps down, the rules do state that once the yellow flags are out, all racing halts.
Certainly it looked like Kane was going as quickly, but you're right, and it's always a way. Everything tends to get thrown into disarray in these final sprint to the flag. So just to summarise where things have ended up after some frantic action on track, Murphy, who was vying for the lead with Kane Scott, is shown in 9th. Kane Scott is 14th, and if he can make it to 75% distance, will still be classified as a finisher and pick up valuable points, as the points calculating abacus is going mad in here in the commentary box.
It is at that, and I see actually Kane Scott and Johnny McIntyre readdressed that position, so essentially what we're saying, Johnny McIntyre probably made the conscious decision, or your lap down. I don't even want to really take on the judicial system here. So smart move on Johnny Mac's part, because now all that hard work that Johnny Reid had done, that 8-second lead that he'd built, has really come to nothing now, because I would expect Kane Scott to actually pull out of the line and let these guys through. None of these a number of laps down.
Helps Greg Murphy, because the margin for he to Emery and the cars in front is now reduced down to daylight, and if he can find his way past 2 or 3 of these cars, will still take the overall round win in this, the first round of the 2012 V8 SuperTourers series. So Murphy will be hoping to pass Emery. Then he has Steve Richards, his former teammate from the Gibson Motorsport days. Next in line, of course, co-winners of Bathurst, Richards and Murphy. the Super Cheap Auto Bathurst 1000 in October. And of course we'll see both of those drivers in their respective mounts. Murphy with Kelly Racing and Richards with Ford Performance Racing. And interesting to see that Campbell Little, the chief engineer from Ford Performance Racing, is here this weekend. I've talked about Oscar Fiorinato, the Australian, also helping Kane Scott. And great to see the interest level heightened by these New Zealand V8 SuperTourers, not including those people watching back at home in Australia on Speed. We even have some of the media scribes here this weekend as well. The boys from Speed Cafe here, Brett Murray and Grant Rowley as well. And I believe there's going to be a Speed Cafe New Zealand internet version coming out pretty soon as well for the die-hard New Zealand fans looking to get their racing fix. So great to see the Aussies supporting this New Zealand product. It is only across the pond, of course, and I'm looking forward to coming back for the remaining 6 races of what's already been a very entertaining weekend.
And here we are, man-in-chief of international motorsport. Oh, Williamson, actually, last time we interviewed him, all 4 of his cars broke down, so I probably won't ever go and do that again. But what's interesting here is how much work these guys are doing, Chris, under the safety car, keeping the temperature in the tyres. Yeah, like we've seen them try to cool the cars down by going out of line of stern in the straight lines, but they are working overtime. They're trying to keep all that temperature up, because if one car drops down, we know before it takes 2 or 3 laps for that temperature to get back up again. So they're going to keep working those tyres as hard as they can, so once that safety car pulls off, you're ready to race. Yes,
and we've seen safety cars create safety cars when they pull off, and even this weekend on the resumption of play we had Scott McLaughlin and Craig Baird coming together earlier today. So these drivers moving left and right, keeping the tyre temperature up, keeping focused, and they'll be being coached by their teams as well to exercise patience. Still a number of laps remaining in this race, and Johnny Reid, I guess, was one of the bigger losers there because he had a significant margin over the second place car of McIntyre, but pleasingly for Reid, he has that gap between McIntyre and Kane Scott sitting there behind him. Okay, we're going racing again and going green, waiting for the supercar to peel, the safety car to peel off into pit lane. As we look back at the pack, and there's a lot of foxing going on there, isn't there? As Johnny Reid stacks them up a bit, and away we go as they pick up the throttle again, albeit not 100%. But I'm riding with Ant Pedersen, who's shown in 3rd spot as we come around to complete yet another lap. And it's the dash to the flag, the trophy dash here on Sunday at Hampton Downs. And look at Kane Scott trying to get past the car of Johnny Reid, despite being shown as a number of laps down.
Certainly got to show racing, and he's got to get on the back, because if they bring another safety car out, or there's a couple, we might actually be able to get back on the tail here, but he's got all the work to do. But like you said before, safety cars can create safety cars, and this might not be an exception because they're all line of stern. Here's Kane Scott, Johnny McIntyre. He knows he's got to execute past Kane Scott as quick as he can. There he goes, unsettled. Has he pulled it off? He has. Now, what are we going to see with Ant Pedersen here? Kane Scott straight off the side of the track.
That's being a little bit too gentle.
Yeah, Murphy just
off the track.
Murphy following him, probably a little bit of sympathy there. So Greg Murphy possibly lost a couple of spots, a bit of smoke. Oh, here we go.
That's a big frontal impact by the look of it.
Interesting. The more cars there, Murphy was sideways coming off the exit of the same corner. So
where does Andy Booth figure in all of this? He's currently 5th as we see Kane Scott limping and Murphy driving off the road as well. And there we see to the right, as I said, fairly heavy frontal impact there, the biggest impact we've seen into the concrete with these cars this weekend, as McIntyre chases down Reid, but he's hot under pressure from the car of Pedersen. Well, that was a big pop and bang there. I think he might have just been hitting a hard cut there as he changed up into 6th gear. And we now look at this battle between
Murphy just coming from a long way back, isn't he?
He certainly has. Well, he's trying to get these points, but I think Booth is going to be a contender here because he's in 5th spot. He's finished in the top 3 on a couple of occasions, and on overall points, it may well be that Booth is not far away from Murphy if Murphy can't find his way up, because, of course, the 2 most likely suspects in Murphy and Scott currently shown in positions 11 and 13, respectively. Johnny Reid still leading. We're looking backwards here at the car of Greg Murphy as we're exiting that corner there, and he has made his way by Emery now. So that would mean he's up into position number 9. And now back at the battle between McLaughlin and McIntyre. So the pair of Max, and McLaughlin has managed to find a way by Pedersen. Up into 3rd spot goes the 18-year-old, and now 2nd.
Wow.
9th on the grid, fastest all day Friday. Was taken out yesterday by Andre Heimgartner in the opening race.
Chris, I don't want to say anything, I'll put the commentator's curse, but this just has a feeling they are 3 abreast, or 2 abreast now. Andy Booth there, of course, there's Ant Pedersen there. Got Andre Heimgartner, who's completely new to this type of racing. Ant Pedersen, Kevin, to speed on. Wow.
McIntyre just got McLaughlin back, and they're all running into each other through the turn one. He's gone from second to fourth in a short breath, and there are more drivers in this gaggle. Baird's involved as well.
Yeah. Oh, Johnny Reid, he's probably going, thank you guys, thank you so much. This is the break I needed. Andre Homgardner there, look, he's had a lot of experience in single-seaters. This is all new to him. He doesn't know this illustrious company he's around at the moment.
Must have been a big pass from McIntyre. Must have been very late and deep into turn one, because he came out of there in second spot, having arrived there third. McLaughlin all of a sudden saw two Fords go by, and now Pedersen dive bombs McIntyre going into turn number 5. Johnny Reid looks back in his mirrors at a gaggle of 10 cars, fighting it out like it's the last lap of the last race of the year.
Well, it's like the light switch has come on with 6 laps to go, isn't it? They're like, right, boys, let's make this race happen.
You're surprised?
That's exactly what they've done.
Well, they've been patient all weekend, and now they go racing. It's the trophy dash, isn't it? As we look forward out of John McIntyre's car. I wonder whether he may well have hit the hard cut a couple of times there coming up the hill, and that allowed McLaughlin to get the momentum on him. But they cross the line in second, third and fourth. Pedersen having recovered that spot, and he holds sway going into turn number 1 there. Ford are your top 3 at the moment. The first of the Holdens is a super cheap auto machine of the 18-year-old McLaughlin.
Wow, it's International Motorsport first and second at the moment with Johnny Reid and Ant Pedersen. Ant Pedersen, the man on screen right now, he's doing a sterling job for the simple reason being hasn't done anywhere near as much mileage in these cars as anybody else. So you have to say, second place, when he looks in the mirror, he sees a lot of experienced guys, a lot of hard charges.
Come good at the right time, hasn't he, as they exit turn number 4 there. Cars starting to dance around a little bit in the rear as these tyres start to wear out. And McLaughlin now under fire from Andy Booth, and Craig Baird is next in queue. They'll be hoping for another 6 or 7 laps, won't they, rather than well, there are 6, 5 at the completion of this one, so plenty of time for these drivers to still vie for a top 3 spot, and they all very evenly matched here.
Oh, sorry, one thing's come to my attention. Will they bring Scott McLaughlin in for that bumper that's dragging on the ground? They'll probably deem that unsafe. With a bit of luck, it's actually going to fly off by itself, and it won't get a call to say coming from mechanical stoppage. I really hope, because this is just such a neat part of the race, and the dynamics are there. Oh, there we go. That answers that question. Goodbye.
Will that be a safety car, though, as it lands on the track? And McLaughlin, he was praying for that, wasn't he? And that rear damage. And if I was Andy Booth, I'd have been a long way to the left of that car. They're sliding around now, picking up the throttle very early on the exit of that corner.
Well, of course, it'll be new to him as well, because he's gone into a very high-speed part of the track without the rear bumper on, so the area could be a bit different.
Beardo up in front of Booth now. Here he comes.
Yeah, the Beardo's on a charge.
There's been some history between Ben and McLaughlin before, as we now go very, very deep. That's the car of Baird, where in fact that's the car of Booth we're looking at from Baird's machine. In fact, McLaughlin now is once again exercising a pass on McIntyre. I wonder if John's struggling with something in that car.
Well, quite possibly, yeah. Safety car is out. We can only think that's to retrieve that bumper that come off the back of Scott McLaughlin's car, but either way, we are going to have a possibly 2 or 3 lap sprint of race 3.
Not a surprise there's a safety
V8
car.
SuperTourer car from Hampton Downs.
Look at that, with the rear bumper of McLaughlin's super cheap auto Commodore sitting forlornly on the front straight. Okay, so safety car conditions again for the rear bumper of Scott McLaughlin. Steve Richards looking to move it from the track himself. Jeff Emery thinking about doing the same thing. And it won't be long before the officials retrieve that errant piece of bodywork. And once again, Johnny Reid says, come on, guys. You know, I had another comfortable lead, and now I have my teammate who will not play rear gunner, I'm sure, right behind him. Johnny Reid, vastly experienced driver, international skill set, and leading this race from his teammate McLaughlin up to third, with McIntyre in fourth and Baird right behind him. And look who's sixth, Greg Murphy, who must surely now have enough points in the bank to take the overall round on us.
You can imagine if they try to get some kind of communication through to Johnny Reid and Pedersen about team orders, they'll have a lot of static all of a sudden, won't they? Oh, sorry, Lyle, I didn't hear that message come through.
Could Murph actually win this motor race from position number 6? I mean, it's not beyond the realms of possibility, the way that they were going into battle a moment ago. They're happy to trade paint and panel swap. And Greg Murphy sitting back in the queue there in position 6 with some drivers fairly fired up in front of him. I doubt very much if Johnny Reid will be caught by Greg Murphy, but Murphy recovering well after that small indiscretion where he made contact with the rear of Kane Scott. Just waiting for the safety car to peel off into pit lane, and we will resume action here at Hampton Downs in the final of the 3 races making up this first round. And it's Johnny Reid and Ant Pedersen for International Motorsport. McLaughlin is third, McIntyre fourth, and Baird a good start.
No.
Drama's there because one of those cars hesitated, and that is really going to concertina the field back up, and McIntyre could lead into one.
Yeah, okay, the rules are very, very clear. You may pull out and pass. Sorry, you may pull out, but you cannot pass the car until you get to the control line. So
overlapping allowed, but not passing, and the big loser there was Scott McLaughlin, who was unfortunately having to pick up the throttle there, had to get on the brakes at the same time, as there's Johnny Reid, and he was the driver that really hesitated, and he's really coming under savagery. McLaughlin's off Murphy's round. It's all happening at turn number 5.
Wow, wow, wow. Doesn't this change in the blink of an eye again?
Well, he was leading the series. Now Murphy's at the back of the field, and it's Pedersen who leads the race ahead of McIntyre on corrected time. And here we see it. And more contact, and Johnny Reid getting pushed from behind there. Murphy caught up in the fray. We go on board now. Murphy, the innocent victim it would see as he spins infield, keeps the engine alight. And there's going to be some discussion post-race, I'd imagine, between some of these drivers. There's the Baird, Richards, Booth, Heimgartner battle. And Eddie Bell with more flapping bodywork, so the race tapes come adrift on the back of that car. And we cross the line to complete lap number 28. 2 frantic laps of action remaining. 5.5 kilometres between Paul Pedersen and the checkered flag. McIntyre third, second, McLaughlin third. And look at this battle pack on screen. Yeah, rear under tray coming off Johnny Reid's car. I said he would have been cursing the safety car. It all went wrong on the restart for Johnny Reid just when we thought he was going to have a victory. And now he's losing rear grips very drastically indeed.
And look at the man who's just come into the frame here, the CRC 556 car of Stephen Richards. He's basically been nowhere all weekend. All of a sudden he pops up in 4th place. But here we go. Look, these guys are getting racy. They're all showing us level of urgency now. Baird car's gone sideways. Look, half his bumper's hanging off. The same with Johnny Reid. They're all falling back at the moment. Andre Heimgartner here could possibly be in the 6th spot after all of this.
Jeff Emery's involved in this battle as well, as these cars are using all of the track and more, and a lot of willing action going on. There's so much bodywork damage. It's Powellville Raceway at Ruapuna next time out. Only a few weeks to get these cars in order, but fortunately it's primarily cosmetic. It won't be cosmetic when we go into dialogue post-race. There will be a lot of differing opinions as far as track position and racing etiquette's concerned, but that's to the drivers to sort out as we look at the car of Murphy passing Kane Scott up through the field there. Of course, Scott shown still in 13th spot, some laps down as we head into the last lap of the race. And who would have thought the Ford that was going to win this race was going to be the 96 car of Pedersen, who was the car 2 of Johnny Reid leading it. He's now down in 7th, and McIntyre sitting between Pedersen and McLaughlin in a very, very solid 2nd spot. And I just wonder what Paul Pedersen, the father of Ant, will be thinking. They had gearbox issues during the course of the weekend, but he's at the front now looking to score his first win in the Super Touring category and the first for Ford this weekend.
It's just going to be such an amazing effort if he can actually do it. He's only got 1 corner to go, and it's a very big sweeping corner now. We see there Johnny McIntyre is coming under the attention of Scott McLaughlin, 1 corner to go. We know Scott doesn't know how to back off, so he'll take the battle. But let's take nothing away from this man in picture right now, or International Motorsport for that matter. And Pedersen, take a bow, young man, because you deserve this race win.
Yeah, well, it was 2 Holden victories in race 1 and 2, but when it mattered most, the Blue Oval Brigade flew the flag high, and flying at highest was Ant Pedersen, that 20-year-old Kiwi. He crosses the line, and Rotorua will go mad. That's a fantastic win for the young man. Kept the car clean. Restart after restart, he survived and passed his teammate after that hesitation there to take a stunning victory in the Lyle Williamson International Motorsport Falcon. 2nd is McIntyre, just holding off McLaughlin. Stephen Richards up into 4th spot. Then it was Andy Booth surviving for 5th. Heimgartner, Baird, Murphy, Knight, and Johnny Reid. And there is a absolutely ecstatic Ant Pedersen screaming inside his helmet. He's a race victor, and he takes the final race here at Hampton Downs in the opening stanza for the V8 SuperTourers series. And there he is, just having a little bit of a celebration, wheel spinning slide on the exit of turn number 4.
And even with Greg Murphy finishing back in 8th, I actually have him as the round winner.
You have to have a very good calculator, my friend.
Yeah, I reckon chapter 1 actually goes to Greg Murphy at the end of the day, but you have to say, it really woke up at lap 24, didn't it? All of a sudden, everybody come to life, everybody started getting racy, and this man, he was patient, more patient than everybody else. He just stayed out of trouble. Look, the car looks perfectly clear, you know, not a ripple panel on it, does it? So He stayed out of trouble. Look at him, you can tell by that. Look at the smile. The smile is in the eyes. What a famous name, Pedersen, as well.
We may mention it, but he was looking very relaxed at the wheel of the car, and clearly he showed the best composure of all the drivers in the top group. We're not sure what happened to Johnny Reid on the restart, but Murphy made contact with drivers. McLaughlin has damage. McIntyre survived it. Booth was turned around. Heimgartner snuck up on them in 6th spot, and this car, it only needs a bit of a wipe down, and it can head to the next round at Powerbuilt Raceway on the South Island, and that was a composed and very mature and quick drive by Ant Pedersen, and hats off to him. It's fantastic to see a name not particularly familiar with a lot of the people who'll be watching this telecast, scoring Ford's first win in the V8 SuperTourers.
Look at him, he is a happy young man too, isn't he? You're right, when he was driving down the straight before, he had one hand, you know, just tucked away in his lap, changing gear, doing 280 kilometres an hour, so...
Yeah, great effort, and well done to he and the rest of his crew there, and Lyle and Nick Williamson also, and their engineering group there. The whole team have worked round the clock, as each of them have, to get these cars here for this weekend. And finally, the dust settles after a real grandstand race. That one was on for young and old there.
Look, winning the race might be easy, getting out might be another part.
It's a popular win too. Yeah, good on him. Well done, Ant. Ford and Holden. 1, 2 and 3 in this race, but it will be Holden's Greg Murphy that will take the overall round win and lead the series heading in to the second round. And those boys look suitably impressed and very, very happy indeed.
Look, they've done all the hard work, those guys. Scott McLaughlin coming to congratulate him as well. The rewards of victory there, a bit of a kiss, so...
Well, we're about to hear from him. It was the mature drivers who won the first couple of races, 39-year-old Greg Murphy, but now it's the youngster, Ant Pedersen, a brilliant drive to the win.
And it's been a tough weekend for you, mate. You've been frustrated, I know, but suddenly it happened in the last third of that race.
Yeah, I don't know what happened, man. That's sweet, eh? That feels good, man. Yeah.
How tough was it out there?
Oh, it wasn't too bad. The safety cars hurt, you know, because all the air gets hot and stagnant. But, man, that feels so sweet, eh? That feels good.
Well done, mate.
Yeah, just big ups to the boys, you know, like they busted it to make everything ready for the car. So big ups to them and our sponsors, Bang Bang. Cheers.
Awesome, mate.
Yes, well, a suitably happy Ant Pedersen there, and he's a bit puffed out, isn't he? I think he was looking backwards more than forwards. Great win. Fords 1 and 2, Pedersen and McIntyre. McLaughlin, the first of the Holdens. Greg Murphy survives in 8th to take the series points lead as we head to the second round in 3 weeks' time. And Johnny Reid, unfortunately, just when he saw the checkered flag in sight, he winds up in 10th with dramas. Emery, Bell, Scott, Manuel, Moore and Corkery rounding out the 16 runners, and the points calculations continue apace here in the commentary box. Been fantastic calling this race. Thank you very much, Mark, and everybody else involved in this one. Really looking forward to Powerbuilt Raceway for round 2 of the V8 SuperTourers.